appreciate all of you hanging out with us. Tuesday edition, Outkick the coverage. Welcome to September and also to the return officially of major college football as well as the month that will bring us the NFL. A lot to get into in today's program, much to discuss. We begin with a story that we've been talking about for a long time on this show, and that is what in the world has gone on in the Big Ten such that they are in the position that they are, particularly because in 2 days, major FBS football will kick off in this country officially. And everyone out there who said, oh, college football's never going to be played is officially going to be 100 billion% wrong. And then come Saturday, we've got games. And then come Monday, we've got games. And then by next week, we're talking about 9 days from now, we've got the NFL kicking off with the Texans on the road against the Chiefs. And then major FBS football, meaning the Power 5 conferences, the Big 12 and the ACC will officially be underway. And so we now know why the Big Ten is not playing. And while Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten, has come in for a lot of criticism, there now is a tally they released thanks to the lawsuit from the 8 Nebraska players, the totals to let you know what the voting actually looked like after 3 weeks of trying to stonewall and hide it from people. And it was an 11-3 vote to shut down the Big Ten. The only 3 schools that voted in favor of playing fall sports in the Big Ten were Iowa and Nebraska. And you remember that Dan Patrick basically let us know that a while ago, and Ohio State. So an 11-3 vote, meaning they easily got over the hurdle to shut down the conference. All that was needed was 60% in order to cancel the season. So they would have needed roughly 3 more votes in order to allow the season to continue. That means if you're a Big Ten fan, if Penn State, if Michigan, and if Wisconsin, let's say, had been willing to fight for the season would still be going on, and the Big Ten wouldn't be in the disastrous situation that they are in right now. Now, what happens from this point going forward? There's been a lot of talk in the Big Ten. And let me just say this, and we're going to talk with Joel Klatt, who's going to join us tomorrow. We'll talk with him about this to a certain degree. The Big Ten has at least had parents, players, coaches, fans up in arms over this decision and demanding that things be changed. The Pac-12 still hasn't had a peep of complaining going on, which just further is evidence that people in the Pac-12, by and large, don't really care that much about football. And if you're a hardcore Pac-12 fan, you probably look around, you're like, you know what? That's accurate. USC hasn't said anything. Oregon hasn't said anything. Nobody in the Pac-12 in any kind of way has been part of an organized resistance. But when you look in the Big Ten, I still feel like this story is not completely over. There is an organized resistance that is fighting for football, and now that we know the 11 school presidents who voted against football taking place, now they are going to find their names and themselves under fire, which is exactly what I've been arguing should have happened since this all started, because you have 13 different chancellors and school presidents who are making nearly $14 million in taxpayer dollars apiece. The least they could do is actually sit out there publicly and make their argument so that you know who to blame for the season being canceled instead of trying to hide and avoid their names coming out. Now, unfortunately, this has turned intensely political. Joe Biden is running television ads in Michigan, Wisconsin, and in Pennsylvania, blaming Donald Trump for there not being Big Ten football, even though Donald Trump came on this radio program and said that he thought it would be a tragic mistake if any college football conferences chose to shut down and didn't play. So I think there are still a lot of behind-the-scenes movements going on there. I think this story in the Big Ten is far from over. I think the Big Ten commissioner may well want to play this fall, Kevin Warren, and that some of these university presidents and chancellors, now that their votes are out there in public, may not be very comfortable with all the criticism that is going to rain down upon them about not playing, and that things are only going to get worse for them come Thursday when we have college football games, come Saturday, and come Monday, not to mention when the NFL kicks off next week, as well as all the major college football action, because it is impossible to defend. No matter who you are, no matter what arguments you want to make, if you are right now in the state of Pennsylvania, it is impossible for you to not look around and say, wait a minute, they're playing high school football. Temple and Pitt are both playing college football. The Steelers and the Eagles are playing. In the state of Pennsylvania, it makes no sense that Penn State wouldn't be playing. 2 NFL teams, 2 major college football teams, and all the high schools can play, but the Nittany Lions can't. Makes no sense. Same thing is true in the state of Ohio. You got high school football going on. You've got the Browns and the Bengals playing. You've got the University of Cincinnati playing, but Ohio State, who's probably the most popular football team in the entire state, is not allowed to play? Nonsensical. In Iowa, you've got everybody in Iowa able to play in high school football. You actually had high school baseball already take place, and you had nearly 30,000 fans attend those games. As if that were not enough, on top of that, you also have the Iowa State Cyclones playing, but you're telling me the Hawkeyes can't play? And you've got the governor of Michigan, props to Danny G, who sent in that official request. I'll bring him up here in a minute and find out if we've gotten any update from the state of Michigan. We directly emailed Gretchen Whitmer offering her an opportunity to come on this show and explain why she said she was glad the Big Ten wasn't playing and why she said she was glad that the high school football wasn't playing. But you've got NFL teams playing in all these states. In Minnesota, the Vikings are going to be playing. In Michigan, you've certainly got the Detroit Lions, to the extent you want to count them as a football team playing. Heck, down in Indiana, you've got Notre Dame not only playing, but Notre Dame announced they're going to have fans present, and yet Purdue and Indiana aren't allowed to play. I mean, all of this is utterly nonsensical. In Illinois, you got the Bears playing, but you don't have the Illini playing. Every state in the Big Ten has got football going on, and on a variety of different levels, except for the teams that often matter the most in those states. It's just got to be infuriating for Big Ten fans. And in 2020, where politics creates strange bedfellows to be sure, I never would have anticipated it, but your boy right now that you're listening to has ended up the biggest and best defender for the Big Ten in the entire country of anybody in media. Let me bring in the crew. Danny G, have we gotten any feedback at all from the governor of Michigan about our offer to her to come on the program and explain why she was glad that the Big Ten wasn't happening and glad that the high school sports were not happening as well?
No. Whitmer's public email sent me an auto reply saying she'd look at my email and get back to me as soon as possible, and nothing besides that from her
We
personal
sent that email on Thursday night?
Thursday afternoon, yeah.
All right. So she's now had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday we're moving into through, and now Tuesday, zero response from her.
Correct.
Do you think that we get any response?
No.
Yeah, me either. What about you, Dub? Is this not crazy? Now that we've had Austin Peay and Central Arkansas play, congrats to you on getting the first game of the season right and taking Central Arkansas. Late cover there. Are you not kind of stunned that the Big Ten is truly not playing?
I mean, all you have to do is just say it out loud to yourself. University of Central Arkansas and Austin Peay have played a game. However, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, all these schools, they're not going to play any football as of right now. I mean, that's insanity. They're the only league, along with the Pac-12 and a few other smaller guys, but the Big Ten is the one that's getting all the pushback, and they're not playing. It's total insanity. When you look all across the country, every single other sport, and the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 are playing, but they're not. If I was a Big Ten fan, I honestly don't know what I would be feeling or doing right now. Thank God for the SEC.
It's interesting. Central Arkansas is playing again on Thursday. So they opened the season in an FCS game on Saturday. They're playing again on Thursday. They had to get tested right after the game, and I expected that there might be, like a ton of attention of, somebody tested positive after the game. The reality is the playing of the game itself is highly unlikely to cause anybody to get the coronavirus. Now, that leaves aside the fact that the CDC has now come out and let you know, effectively, we have wildly overreacted to the coronavirus in general. There are only 6% of people that have died exclusively of the coronavirus. In other words, the CDC on their own website said 94% of deaths, quote, from the coronavirus were people who died with the coronavirus, not of the coronavirus. In other words, if you have terminal lung cancer and your lungs are obviously struggling and your kidneys don't work and your liver isn't functioning correctly, and you also test positive for the coronavirus, you count as a coronavirus death. The average person dying of the coronavirus has, according to the CDC, 2.6 additional comorbidities. So the people who are dying of the coronavirus are extremely elderly, and they are extremely unhealthy as a group. And the fact that we have shut down the country over this, to say nothing of sports, but the fact that kids are not in school, the fact that people are not at work, the fact that many sports are not happening, frankly, it's utterly insane. Absolutely insane. Eddie Garcia, you are a major college football fan. Did you enjoy the game Saturday, and are you still sitting around like as crazily overcome by absurdity as this story has been, in disbelief that the Big Ten isn't playing?
Well, as far as the game on Saturday, I did watch some of it. No disrespect intended to any of the schools that were involved, but it just made me want the real thing more, so to speak.
Yep.
But as far as the Big Ten goes, I've been saying it all along. I still haven't heard anyone give a legitimate explanation for why they made the announcement and the decision when they did, and not wait to see how things would work out. And I don't know. Are we totally? There were stories over the weekend that maybe there was going to be a change of heart and maybe this thing would get reversed, but is that totally out the window now? Or
I think, let me just say this. I think later today, the pressure will get ratcheted up even more than it is already right now on the university presidents and the chancellors, based on some of the behind-the-scenes conversations and movements I believe is going on. So I think later today, the pressure will get driven up to a certain extent. I think Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big 12, was happy to finally have those numbers out there. So if the Big Ten had put these votes out publicly before yesterday, and I don't think, by the way, they ever would have put these votes out, but for the Nebraska players filing their lawsuit, I don't think that we would have ever known, hey, Nebraska, Iowa, and Ohio State were the only 3 schools that were willing to vote to play college football. I don't think we would have had that information. And frankly, if I'm a Big Ten fan, I think this vote should have had to be in public, and I think you should have had to have your presidents and your chancellors step out and make it with everybody aware of what they're doing, as opposed to have them hiding for 3 weeks hoping to avoid their actual votes being made public. Because remember, I really do think that the Big Ten would have voted to play if all these presidents and chancellors had to put their votes out public. Because I think that these guys are trying to avoid the criticism from canceling the season, and now it's going to rain down upon them in a very heavy way because they can't hide from the votes that they cast. In fact, I would expect that it is a rough time if you are a president and a chancellor of one of those 11 schools, because the numbers are declining massively again on the coronavirus infections nationwide. For instance, Florida has now dropped below 2,000 daily infections. Remember when everybody was like, oh my God, Florida's so unsafe, it's terrifying, why in the world are they putting the NBA bubble there? I mean, we're going to have fans in stands in the next couple of weeks in fairly substantial numbers for NFL games and for college games, and we're not even to the point where the NBA is out of the first round right now in the playoff. They still got a lot of time left in that bubble for the Western Conference in particular. We got 2 Game 7s to take care of before things are even going to change in the bubble at all. So I think this thing is going to end up looking a lot worse for the Big Ten, as you said, Eddie Garcia, because you have to wait and think about, by the time the SEC kicks off on September 26th, based on the trajectory of this virus right now, the number of cases are plummeting consistently and appreciably. The number of deaths are declining rapidly. And again, deaths are in quotation marks here because the vast majority of people dying of the coronavirus were already sick and very unhealthy and likely to be in seriously bad shape and die of other illnesses as well, instead of with the coronavirus as opposed to of the coronavirus. Roberto, are you still in disbelief over the Big Ten not playing?
Yeah, well, the thing that gets to me is, like, I'm not a big college football fan, but one thing that gets me is that why did the Big Ten think that just because they decided not to play that the SEC, which is the powerhouse of college football, that was going to follow them? Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. And now they're talking about playing maybe in Thanksgiving. What is that? What are they looking at? Maybe to see if the numbers go even more down.
Yeah,
but
that does not in any way.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Playing on Thanksgiving or thereabouts in late November is actually, I think, just going to make the Big Ten look worse. Because I think what's going to happen if that ends up transpiring is everybody's going to say, wait a minute, this is just basically an acknowledgement that you got it wrong, and now we're going to play a season that doesn't matter at all with a ton of the best players sitting out, because none of the top players in the Big Ten are going to play in a winter football season right before they get ready, or even in the middle of getting ready for the NFL Combine. You're already seeing a lot of guys make the decision, you know what, I'm not going to play this fall. Now that we're into September, I think still a decent number of guys might well decide to sit out. And the Big Ten has blown this beyond possible belief.